Welcome to A Wash with Colour from Croagh in County Mayo. The writer William Makepeace Thackeray described this view as the best he had ever seen in the world. Later, I'll be visiting Rockfleet Castle, where my guest Sankhaguha will be testing his watercolour skills. Towering majestically over Clew Bay, Croagh, also known as the Reek or Eagle's Mountain, is every bit as beautiful as Thackeray described. Named in honour of Ireland's patron saint, it's been an important pilgrimage site for more than 15 centuries. In the year 441, St Patrick is said to have climbed this mountain and fasted for 40 days and nights in his effort to convert Ireland to Christianity. Every year since then, pilgrims have made the 2,510-foot ascent on the last Sunday of July. The bravest of them do it in their bare feet. My guest today, Sankhaguha, is a broadcaster who's done a fair bit of travel in his time. County Mayo, I'm pleased to say, is one of the few places he's never been.
Hurricanes are a regular event in this part of the Caribbean, and the political hurricane which swept through East Europe is unlikely to pass. These rituals all come from old African beliefs called animism, as practiced by the bush doctor. Today in Senegal, the men of magic are called marabout.
Shanka, ¿qué pasa?
You know that socialism or death business? Well, I guess socialism gets my vote.
Oh, well, it would, wouldn't it?
Shanka, I must say you're very welcome to Ireland.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Have you been here before?
I've been here a good few times before. I've done loads of different types of assignments in Ireland, both in the north and the south. When I started in journalism, I was doing quite a lot of more serious news and current affairs stories, so a lot of that took me to Belfast, to the north, reporting on various things to do with the Troubles. And then, of course, when I started doing travel programmes, saw quite a lot of the south, and I can't even remember how many times I've been to Ireland. But the one area that I haven't been to is this area, the west coast. So it's really a pleasure to be here.
Well, did you always have an interest in broadcasting?
Not always, no, actually. Funnily enough, I wanted to be a rock star, like all teenagers. So I spent a fair bit of time wasting my youth being a wannabe rock star. The other thing that I'd always been interested in was news and current affairs. So after university, I went on to do a postgraduate diploma in radio journalism, and that kind of opened doors. And one after another, I found myself doing the kinds of jobs that I really wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, the travel show and the travel programmes that you've done seems to have taken up a lot of your career. How did that all come about?
Well, that was a result, I guess, of the first programme I did in television called Network 7, which was a Channel 4 programme. What used to be called youth television, YOOF. Right. And we were the original youths, and I was youthful once. That programme was one that really suited my kind of philosophy at the time, because I just finished this course on radio journalism, and I wanted to work in television, but I wanted to do quite serious stories, but I wanted to do them in a new style, and here was this programme that came along with almost exactly that brief, and as a result of that, other jobs came along, and I was offered The Rough Guide.
That seems to have been a very interesting show, The Rough Guide. It took you to lots of interesting places.
Well, it certainly did, all sorts of places. Not even places that necessarily you'd go to on holiday. That was what was nice about it. And the other thing that was really nice about it was that it was, well, in fact, almost the only travel programme in which the way you discovered the place was through people. Because I didn't just like the idea of telling people about, here's the beach and here's the hotel and this is what you get for your money and all that kind of stuff. To me, anyway, proper travel is about finding some point of contact with the place.
Well, what are you working on at the moment?
Lots of different things. I've just finished a series which is on medical science, breakthroughs in medical science, called The Living Pulse. And that was a 26-parter, all sorts of wonderful new discoveries in medicine. I'm also, I've set up my own production company and I'm developing a couple of travel-related ideas, not surprisingly.
Well, if you had one ambition in your life, what would it be?
One ambition? I might as well make it a big one then. No, actually, I think my ambitions are fairly modest. I'd like to basically pay off the mortgage and just spend time with people who are good fun.
Well, what about the arts? Have you an interest in the arts?
Yeah, I've always had an interest in the arts. I've got fairly, sort of open, eclectic tastes. So anything from, sort of some of the big, sort of masters of the Renaissance, or even, sort of Byzantine art, which is fairly primitive, but still very, very moving.
It's amazing to look at as well.
It's fabulous, yeah. Very, very rich. Yeah. And right through to really modern conceptual art.
I believe you're a keen photographer as well.
Yes, yeah, that was... well, probably because, as you'll find out, I can't draw. Yeah, I'll take pictures, yeah. All the way through all my travels, I've taken at least one camera, lots of different lenses, and taken lots of pictures. And in fact, on the rough guide, it was my gimmick. I was this kind of mad tourist with a camera permanently, sort of worn like a necklace around my neck.
Well, I have a location for you today, and I know it has inspired me in the past, and I hope today it'll inspire you as well.
I feel a little abstract expressionist phase coming on.
The village of Mursk at the foot of Croagh is older than the patron saint. The name comes from the Irish for sea monster, a pagan god worshipped by the ancient locals before the coming of Christianity. This ruin near Mursk is all that remains of an Augustinian abbey founded in 1457 and dedicated to St. Patrick. The monks left at the start of the 19th century, but Mass is still celebrated here once a year on the last Sunday of August. Ceramic maker Henri Edu, originally from Paris, produces a range of functional and decorative pottery at his studio near Ballina. Henri, was there a tradition of potting in your family?
There was, yes. My father was a ceramist in the 50s in Paris. From very early age, we grew up with ceramics in the house. Yeah, I believe it was almost in the blood, as they say, yes. My uncle had created this little workshop in the west of Ireland. But I will never forget when I arrived the day after St. Patrick's Day in 1971. And my uncle was driving this little Renault Foil, and he says, "When did you want to become a potter?" I said, "What?" See, my English was so basic that I didn't know what a potter was. Never mind. The next morning he said to me, "Go and get some clay." What is clay? I was quite lucky that my uncle took me on, because it was quite strict conditions. I had to be able to learn English as well as making pots and earn my keep. So that's how I came to Ireland over 30 years ago to learn a trade which I love and I stuck with ever since. Everything was quite traditional and primitive. They took their own local clay. They had very basic equipment. The pottery was made on traditional cake wheels, and all the glazes and colors were mixed here on the premises.
Was it a difficult apprenticeship?
Yes, yes. I'm still serving it. We're still learning, which is fascinating about this work. We always learn something. Pottery encompasses so many disciplines. It's a fascinating work. But I would think that my work is fairly simple and sober. So we were taught from very early days to work with very few tools, if any. All I use when I'm working on drawing or making a part is a sponge and a stick. I think by retaining this primitive, this simple way of working has made this pottery quite famous, because it has just evolved very, very slowly throughout times. It's very much a love story, being a potter. You have to be very respectful of your material. It's quite a fascinating process when you master the clay in the form of the shaping. It can take all sorts of directions. Sometimes you can't actually see what you're doing. So you really have to feel the clay between your fingers and let it flow.
Henri, take me through the process of making a jug.
Well, I will start with the clay. The clay has got to be free of air bubble, free of impurities and stones and any little tiny, sometimes particle of dirt, which later on will blow out in the kiln and create a lot of damage. The ball of clay is then placed on the wheel and centered, and that's when the drawing takes place. Then once the part has been made and cut away delicately and left to dry, it is then finished the next day, maybe 2 days later, and then stamped. Then we pull handles. The jug itself will be, or the mug or whichever article will have to be slipped. And slip is literally a clay with a color through it, a liquid clay. It goes into the kiln for the first biscuit firing, and then when it comes out of the kiln, the article is glazed and put back in for another 2 or 3 days. So it's quite a slow process. The heat has got to climb very slowly, or you have risk of explosions or blowouts or distortions. But the firing is very, very crucial, because that's also what makes the work so exciting. You open a kiln in the morning and you haven't a clue what to expect, which is fascinating.
You have some fantastic colours in your work, Henri. How do you get those?
It's very easy to get the colours. I mean, if you turn around, Dermot, I could show you something like 60 different colours, 6 different yellows, 6 different reds. Everything is obtainable nowadays, which weren't obtainable, of course, 30 years ago. If people want blue, we'll do blue. And if they want pink, we'll give them pink. But we also feel certain colours are more appropriate with certain shapes. One has got to be very resourceful and change vision or change focus from time to time. So, no, we shouldn't be doing that anymore. Not only because it's not selling, but because it's not exactly what we want to do with the rest of our life. It's a never-changing process. Otherwise, we would become totally stagnant if we were just making the same things and using the same colors every day. That's what makes the work so fascinating and challenging.
This is Rockfleet Castle, once the stronghold of the legendary 16th century pirate queen Grace O'Malley. It's an impressive place even today, a fitting memorial to Mayo's most formidable daughter, the perfect scene for Shanka's masterpiece. Well, tell me, Shanka, what do you think of the scene?
Well, I mean, on a day like this, it's absolutely spectacular. You've had this weather specially imported from the Mediterranean, haven't you? This is, you're not going to try and kid me, this is Ireland.
It's like this all the time.
Oh, yes, yeah.
No, but I think it's a fantastic scene for today's painting, and the castle on the right-hand side of the image is going to set the painting, and it's a lovely focal point. And then the water behind and the little bits of seaweed give a nice contrast to it.
Yeah.
But what makes it for me is the blue boat.
That's amazing. I mean, it's a gorgeous splurge of colour right in the foreground.
Exactly.
I think you've chosen your spot really well.
So how do you think you're going to handle this?
Well, I've brought my own tools to handle it. So you've got all of this, and I've got this, you see. And what I do is I point this over there, and then I go, that's it, and we're done. We can go to the pub now.
Right, let's go. Okay.
As I've never done this before, but I guess I'm in safe hands here.
Well, the first thing we have to do is get a sketch down, so we'll start with the castle itself. And if you look at the closest vertical line, the closest corner to us, that's the best place to start, and then we can gauge everything from that. Well, I think that's enough of the sketch anyway, Shanka.
Yeah.
You see, what we've actually done there, we've just put in, the broad outline of the top of the hill.
Yeah.
And a few little marks there to show where those bushes are in the background.
Yep.
And we've basically blocked out the outline of the castle.
I'm astonished, it actually does look a bit like what we're looking at.
We'll go and put in the sky now.
Right.
Now, you see, whenever we look at the sky, up towards the top of the sky you have a blue colour, but as it sinks towards the horizon, it gets a lot paler.
Yep.
So we have to show that when we're putting on the wash. And what we'll do, we'll have blue here and then fade it as it goes down to, you know, various shades of grey and yellow, just to show.
You can see yellow in there?
I can, surely.
Yeah.
You see towards the horizon, there's a bit of crimson and everything there.
Well, I'm looking for it.
Yeah, well, it blends through, the yellow colour that we put on will blend through the blue colour, and
Right.
you'll get that lovely diffused feeling to it. But
Right.
first of all, I want you to wet the paper in the sky area, but not over the whole lot, just in and around those areas. It helps keep the paint wet on a day like that. So off you go, just in a swirling motion, but not up towards the top, just in the centre.
Right, like
That's
that.
it, yeah, and just keep going back into the bucket of water.
Okay, and I'm careful not to go over the lines in the picture, yeah?
Exactly, because if you bring the water below there,
Yeah.
then you're going to have the paint following. That's fine, that's enough water. So I'm going now into the raw sienna and water mixture, and this is very, very dilute. And I'm just going to put some of that through. Look, you see what happens, it diffuses through it and helps to give a nice soft edge to that.
Yeah.
So some over there as well. And it's very important when we're doing this that we cut around that castle.
Yeah,
So if you bring the brush down the edge,
like that.
yeah, I'll just hold the board for you. That's it.
So it's got to be quite precise along
It
there.
has, because if the wash goes over the castle at all, then the sky colour will follow. And we have to be very quick because this is now starting to dry.
Okay,
So I'm going into this second mixture of crimson and neutral tint with more crimson in the mix. And that gives us that sort of very subtle purpley grey. And blend that through. There you go.
on this side, same.
Yeah. And you see when that blends
See, but
with...
this doesn't look like sky. I mean, it looks very nice, but
Yeah, well, it'll finish up okay. I have every confidence in you.
this is very impressionist.
Yeah.
I like it.
Now, we're going to put on the blue sky at the top.
Yeah.
It's very important that you fill that along the top first of all, and then pull it down between those other colours that you have on. So off you go, starting on the on the
Right.
left-hand side.
Am I allowed to go beyond those lines then?
Well, you can, but it doesn't really matter. You know,
Okay.
you just keep it within that. If you just pull that across now,
pull it across
yeah,
like
it'll
that,
stretch
yeah.
the paint out. And then when you get down near this other cloud, work it down in.
okay.
Exactly.
That's a cloud.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think it looks anything like the sky we've got, but I think it looks fantastic.
We'll move on now to the foreground. But look at the green against the seaweed colour, the reddish-brown seaweed colour, and then the water beyond. The green is really standing out in the sunlight today. And it's not all one shade of green. There's a lot of different colours in there. There's some red and there's some darker green.
Well, that's one thing you can guarantee. You're going to get lots of green in Ireland.
Yeah. Well, people talk about 40 shades, you know, but I think there are a lot more than that. Now, let's move on and put this in with the number 8 brush. Now, you see, that's just a
It's
mixture
real
of...
lime green, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
it's
And that's a mixture of Windsor yellow and a tiny bit of Windsor blue, just to give that nice vibrancy to
There's
it.
blue in this.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, but we're doing it just along here.
Yeah, but right up to this edge.
Okay.
Right, and you need to keep loading the brush as well.
Okay.
I'm going to mix a second colour to feed through that. Now, you're talking there about 40 shades of green. Watch this here whenever I put the second brush in. Like, you see what happens there?
That's magic.
You're getting...
Yeah.
Try that there, do you see? Just along that bottom edge.
Yeah. So just follow these little
Yeah. Just nice
sketches,
little
yeah.
lines, yeah. You see, at the end of the day, you're trying to give an impression of what you're looking at. And you have light green, dark green, and there's a bit of reddish green in there as well. That's a bit thick now. Hold on
Yeah.
to
Well,
loosen
at
that
the end of
up
the
a
day,
bit.
what I'm having is a lot of fun.
Well, Shanka, it's all starting to come together now. And you see, while the foreground's drying, we can move on now and do the background hills. But we want to throw them back a bit, just to make them recede into the distance slightly.
Yeah.
So I want to use a weaker wash this time than we had been using on the foreground. So let's say the background one, you have 5 sections, and they're all divided by those little hedgerows that come down. Now each one is going to have a different colour. So we'll start with this bluish green, which is Windsor yellow, a bit of Windsor blue, and some cerulean blue into it.
Yeah.
And just take the brush there and get that in right down to that line. There you go. But be careful, not overly careful that you don't go over that line, but at the same time try and keep it as much inside it as possible.
We're taking it right down to the tower.
Yeah, right down, and cut very straight along the edge of the tower.
Okay.
Because if you let that green come over,
Yeah.
then there's no definition to the edge there. Now take this brush, the number 5, and that's a darker green,
Yeah.
and put that one on next, bringing it down to meet that one. But if you just leave a little white space between the 2 washes so that it doesn't bleed back.
Right. It's very relaxing, isn't it? How long does it take to do a whole painting from scratch?
It depends on the subject, but you know, the longer you're painting and the more competent you get at it,
Yeah.
the less time you want to spend on it. Now,
Well, so field 2 is done.
yeah, and that's the yellow colour there for the one next to it.
Yeah.
I'd be slightly exaggerating the colour.
What do you think it should be?
I'm looking for
slightly more reddy than that,
colour.
isn't it? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Windsor yellow and a tiny bit of crimson. That's better.
Yeah.
You can stretch that little bit of dirty wash through that, and it'll actually help the texture of it. You can move on now with this next one.
I've seen a little bit there which I missed. Look, can't let that one go.
You're getting all fussy now.
It's my painting.
There you go. Right,
Okay.
this one here goes on now in the same way.
All of this,
Yeah.
this section.
And when you have that field completed, we can move across to the right of the castle and put in the hills in the distance on the far side. Well, we're getting there, Shankha. The background hills are in, and the hedges, you can see how that breaks up the background.
Yeah, I think that field in particular is very well rendered.
So we'll move on now and put in the water. And this is a very weak wash of cerulean blue with a tiny bit of Windsor yellow. Just to give that turquoise colour. I'll just test this first of all and see what... Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
So if you start over there and just put it in along that far bank first of all, and then you can broaden the stroke out as you come forward, but be careful not to go over this here as well.
Okay, because that's seaweed.
Yeah. I must say you're getting great control out of that brush now. You know, you seem to be gaining in confidence all the time.
I reckon that the more you do it, the more relaxed you get and the more control you get, and at the same time speed up.
There's a mixture of cerulean blue and neutral tint. And I'm just going to put a few wind bars through that.
Wind bars?
Wind bars. You know, whenever the wind blows the water, it changes colour.
Well, yeah, I kind of knew what they looked like. I didn't know they were called wind bars.
Well, I call them wind bars. God knows. They might be known by some other name.
Okay, and another one there?
Yeah, just another one. And it'll blend through that. Now we'll move on to the castle.
Yeah.
And that's going to be very simply done with 2 washes first of all.
Right.
And that just lets you get a bit of texture into the stonework itself. So starting there with raw sienna and water, I just want you to very quickly block in the whole castle area except for the roof. So there you go, using the number 8, block the whole castle in as quickly as possible.
Okay. And coming down like that, yeah?
Yeah. You can come vertical or horizontal.
Okay.
Because it's stonework and it'll not matter which way you do it, really.
Okay.
But just the quickest way to block it in, that's what I would suggest to you.
Okay.
I'll mix up a second colour that we're going to put into that. And it's burnt sienna and a little bit of neutral tint. There you go, bleed some of that there through. Now put it down in vertical strokes and then horizontal strokes as well. And it just gives you that staining textured effect.
Like that?
Yeah, and you can keep building that up, you know, wash on top of wash until you get the texture that you need. Now we need to get some of that dark black colour. It's a very strong dark colour towards the bottom.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to use neutral tint and light red for that. Just set it along there.
What does neutral tint mean?
It's well, it's the name of a colour, but it's a very, very dark colour. It's like a dark greyish purple. If you look at it in this dilute form.
It's a good way of darkening colours.
Well, we must leave that to dry now because we've given that texture by bleeding those colours in, but we need to let it dry before we put any figuring on top of that. But we can move down to the boat.
Which is the most instantly colourful and eye-catching feature of the landscape.
It's a real bright blue too, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we'll start with the red at the top, and or the bottom, as it is.
Bottoms up.
Yeah. So that is a mixture of light red and crimson, and we'll put that on with the number 5 brush. Now, if you take it from there, that rib there, and it only comes down as far as that line before the blue starts.
Yeah.
So off you go with that, and just fill that over.
Okay, so I'm following this line here.
Yeah. Pull it over to there, and down to that line.
Okay.
Now we must move on to the blue. Now let me see, that's the blue there, but leave a little white line, a space.
That's again to stop it from
bleeding,
reacting with the other colour.
So put that on, and that comes along to that line, and that's very dark then, because that's the shadow underneath.
Right.
What about boats? Do you have any interest in them yourself?
Me and water just don't get on.
Like myself.
No, I was brought up in India, in Delhi, which is probably about as far as you can get from the sea.
And what would your ideal holiday be then? You know, where you've travelled a lot yourself, where would you?
Definitely land-based. My ideal holiday would be, well, it is generally, trying to find somewhere really quiet.
That's far
where
enough.
where I can catch up on reading some nice books. I'm a bit of a foodie. I like nice food, so somewhere where there is a nice local kind of food culture. And these days, with 2 kids in tow, you don't want to do long haul. So generally in Europe, I mean, France, Spain, Italy, the usual suspects.
Well, we can let the boat dry now before we can put in that dark shadow underneath, because again, if we try to feed that in there, it's going to bleed through the blue.
That's really standing out now, isn't it?
Yep.
Because that looks like the only sort of man-made colour in the whole picture.
The next thing we want to deal with now is the roof, the slate roof on the castle. We'll just mix up a colour here of cerulean blue with a bit of neutral tint.
Right.
And I'll just put that on in a very pale wash. There you go.
Yeah.
Just pull the brush across. There should be enough there to do the whole thing. And pull it across and then pull it downward in the direction of the fall.
Okay, like that.
Yeah. And then you could put a few wee indications of slates on there using a pencil.
And how would you do that?
Well, again, a simple way to do it is just using a pencil.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and just put it across there while it's wet.
Right.
Just like that, to show that that's a ridge tile.
Yeah.
And then you have a few little slates there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want to overlap those and keep the line of the edge of the slate coming in the direction of the fall.
You're going to trust me to do that?
Yeah, just a few suggestions.
Okay.
Now.
And a few suggestions is enough?
Yeah. But it's very important that you keep the fall going in the same direction all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Am I doing okay there?
That's fine. If you do every single one, it can get too cluttered.
Yeah.
So what we need to do now is come down and put in the detail of the windows and the doors.
Yeah.
And there's a few dark holes there. There were probably slats for shooting through at one stage.
Yeah.
And you can see the darkness in between or in behind
Yeah.
the slots themselves.
Yeah, it looks like it was being defended at some point.
Yeah, I'd say many, many times.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
We're done.
How did you find it yourself?
Well, I've never done a watercolour of any shape or form before. One of the great things about doing something like this is that it gives you an excuse to spend a day just in one spot, and in a beautiful spot like this, and just admire and get to know the landscape.
Listen, all you have to do now is sign it, so there's a pen.
I do feel a bit of a fraud, I have to say.
Oh,
but
no, come on. Over there.
All right. It's down here, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next time on A Wash with Colour, I'll be in the Kingdom, otherwise known as County Kerry, when my guest will be my all-time favourite Blue Peter presenter, Valerie Singleton. In the meantime, I'm off to find more painting locations, so it's goodbye from County Mayo. For further information or fact sheets on A Wash with Colour, turn to CFAX page 628.